Today's podcast is sponsored by Fire Facilities Incorporated, expert engineers, designers, and manufacturers of steel training towers, burn rooms, and mobile units that are all made in the USA. All right, welcome back to 3-Point Firefighter. Today is a big day for me. 3-Point Firefighter is going international with our guest today. Now, our guest is Matt Davis from Tasmania, Australia. Now, Tasmania is an island state around 500,000 people south of mainland Australia. Matt started there as a volunteer firefighter in 2003, and then he became a career firefighter in 2009. He currently works for the Hobart Fire Brigade. Now, this fire brigade looks after around 250,000 people and has 4 24-hour firehouses and 1 8-to-4 firehouse Monday through Friday. Matt, thank you for being on the show. Welcome to 3-Point Firefighter.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Okay. Matt, I'd like to start out with, first off, tell me a little bit how you got in the fire service and where it led you to today.
So I guess both my brothers were volunteers, and they were my older brothers. So I did the little brother thing and sort of followed them into it. And so I joined my local volunteer brigade when I was about 19. That was in 2003. I kind of found that, that was a really cool thing. You get out and help the community and see amazing things and, do some really interesting work. And from there, I just kind of thought that that's sort of what I want to do for a career, and started making a few steps towards that. And in 2009, I was successful in getting a job as a full-time firefighter, and sort of been doing it ever since, I guess.
That's great. That's cool. Okay, so how did I come across Matt Davis? That's a good question. I was teaching a class in fire dynamics. I'm always looking on YouTube to find the most relevant information that's easily digestible, and they're not always out there. I am a big fan of Matt Hinkle. If you're trying to learn how to pump a truck, especially, Matt Hinkle's the way to go. He has that way to break things down to that firefighter level. Well, Matt, you're the same way. I came across some of your videos, and I was blown away with a lot of things. The information was great. Don't get me wrong. The information was great. How you taught it was great. But your videos, the recording quality, everything was top notch. What got you started into making those videos?
It's kind of a long story, I guess. I started off working as an instructor, and I teach sort of urban fire behaviour. I take that sort of training at work, and I kind of ended up realising that we had a bit of a gap in people just instructing purely for fire dynamics. So I spent a fair bit of effort, like building up my knowledge and skill and, training and that kind of thing in that area. And I quickly sort of realized that for people coming into the courses, it would be really useful if we could preload them with fire dynamics information before they came to our courses. And that way that when they actually come to the course, they're already, a long way there, and we can really focus in on, talking about the more advanced stuff like flashover and backdraft, fire gas ignition, and actual tactics in moving through a building rather than the basics. And then I just kind of went, well, an easy way of doing that is probably to make some videos. And I'm a bit of a photographer and enjoy making videos as a hobby anyway. So it was just kind of a bit of a natural progression, I guess.
So I got to ask you, on some of your videos, like I said, the production value is great. I see a lot of the video is inside a can, and you can see the neutral plane perfectly. You got the fire off in the back. And was that actually training you did, or did you find that somewhere on the internet?
No, those videos are from training that we run, and we just run them in shipping containers. And it just allows us to sort of get a fire started, let it build up towards flashover, but certainly doesn't get there. It just lets us replicate as best as we can real world fire behaviour in a controlled environment. And I think that's pretty standardised in a lot of countries in the world. We certainly didn't come up with it. We've copied what we've got from other states in Australia, and they got it from some European nations. So it's a pretty common kind of way of running training, and it's easily repeatable.
One of the ones I like the best is, and again, I've seen this little clip in a couple of your videos because it's pertinent to all these videos, the different ones you do. But when I was doing the fire dynamics class, I was really trying to hammer home the idea of using a straight stream or a solid stream, even hitting smoke as you move towards the seat of the fire, and not using a fog stream, because a fog stream will entrain all that air and can disrupt that thermal balance. So in your video,
Sure.
it shows perfectly where a guy opens up the fog nozzle for just a short 1 second burst, and you can see the neutral plane and everything is wanting to come down on top of the firefighters. But he only gave it a little bit of a burst, so it kind of resettles. Was that one of your intentions for that video, or is that just accident?
It's not really an intention for the video, but it is a part of our training. Like where I understand that there's two different schools of thought around straight stream and like fog patterns. And we teach how to use fog patterns so that we actually maintain that neutral plane. That's kind of where our training's at. And one thing that I've learned with either side, like I've started to learn a bit more about the straight stream stuff because it seemed really counterintuitive to me because I spent so much time teaching people how to use fog nozzles. That when I've sort of started learning that people were using straight stream with quite a lot of success, it seemed a bit strange because I was sort of looking at it the other way. And I've sort of found that I think you can do either one as long as you do it well. So if you're using a fog nozzle to do some gas cooling to be able to get yourself to a fire, you have to do it well. And if you don't do it well, you are going to disrupt that neutral plane and you are going to end up with a lot more steam further down and searching and everything else is going to get harder. So that's actually the way we teach, and that's not our model. That's, once again, that's something that's come from our counterparts in the rest of Australia, and that's sort of how the rest of Australia operate. And we didn't come up with it ourselves. It's, once again, it's come from Europe. So it's an interesting thing where straight stream seems to be a really common thing in the US, where diffuser nozzles and so forth are quite big here. And we use them differently, but I think still a good result.
When I first came to the fire service, we were using fog streams all the time, and it was basically shipboard firefighting. That tactic of you'd spray a fog in a room, shut the door, let the steam do its job, but it wasn't near as effective as the solid stream, as they found out over here. The solid stream and the straight stream, as far as putting out the fire, there's less chance of disrupting that thermal plane and everything. Do you all do a lot with the studies that were done over here, the UL NIST studies and the UL FSRI studies on like water mapping and streams and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I guess for me, I work in a fairly small organization, and we piggyback a lot off one of our counterparts and on the mainland. They take care of Sydney, which is a city of about 5 million people. So they have a much bigger fire behaviour school than we do. So we just kind of piggyback off a lot of their research and a lot of the work that they do for when it comes to official training. So they use a lot of US stuff. They use a lot of European stuff. They do a lot of work for their own. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. We certainly use straight streams in Australia. We use a lot of them. They're probably the majority of what we use, but we also use fog patterns and the steam in a room to actually extinguish it under certain circumstances. So a room that's flashed over that you can approach with zero chance of survivability in there, you can create a lot of steam in there and do really, really fast knockdowns with a diffuser nozzle. But as I've seen, you can also do it with straight stream, which is really interesting too. So.
We were talking earlier before we started recording about some of the differences that you might encounter versus what I might encounter. And I gave you the warning. I said, look, if I ask stupid questions, it's just because I'm really ignorant on how things are done over there, which I'm sure they're not dramatically different. But one of the things you mentioned was what you would send on a box alarm versus what we would send. So if we get a box alarm right now, like say it's just a structure, okay, it's not a house fire, but it comes in because their alarm goes off. We're sending a truck company, 2 engines, a battalion chief, and a rescue truck. So for something like that, why don't you explain what you all do and why you do what you do?
So I think by box alarm, our equivalent is called a DVA or a direct brigade alarm. And so it means someone's smoke alarm has gone off somewhere, and that's linked to a sender panel that just directs it straight to our organisation, and then we respond off that. Our response is slightly varied. Like for a hospital or something like that, we'll send 2 trucks, or a high-rise building, we'll send 2. But for the most part, we'll just send 1. And it's a heavy pumper, so it carries about 1,800 litres of water. It's got a pump that'll pump between 4,000 to 5,000 litres per minute.
You mentioned that you have 4 24/7 firehouses, which I thought all firehouses are 24/7, but then you go in and say you have one firehouse that's only manned Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. Tell me a little bit about that.
So we have one station in our area. It's a bit of an oddity in our state. Our fire service is statewide, and we just have the one day work station, and it's just in an area that at night the volunteers can take care of the station. So, but during the day, they sort of found that, and it's been operating this way for a very long time. So when it actually got set up this way, I don't know, but during the day, the volunteers, there's not a lot of work in the area, so they'll all head to the city or head out of the area to go to work, which leaves the area kind of without any fire protection. So they put a day work station in there a long time ago, and I think there were a few bad calls, So I think there were a few nasty calls back in the day that prompted a bit of a change to put the extra crew in there.
So let me ask you this. What about your shift work? Like, so there's different ones over here. They're normally, you might get I've worked a 24 on, 24 off. I've worked 24 on, 48 off. And there's some out there that do 2 on, 4 off. What are your schedules like?
So we're a 4 on, 4 off. We do 2 10-hour days, and that's 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then the next day after that, we do 2 14-hour nights, so 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. And then when we finish that, we've got 4 days off, basically. I mean, we've kind of already worked 8 hours of the first day because we're finishing at 8 a.m. in the morning, but yeah, it's exactly 4 full days off before we go back. So
the night shift, do you really do much? Do you actually do training and all that stuff, or you just go in, pretty much sleep till the next day and then do some things, or do you do equally the same amount of training and work on both day and night shifts?
Probably not the equal amount, but we certainly do train on night shifts. We have stand down, and I think that's at about 10:30 thereabouts. So after that time, if you want to go to the gym or study or have a snooze or whatever else, you're allowed to. But up until that time, you can be expected to train and be involved in whatever else the station's doing. So sort of 6 p.m. through till 10 p.m. or 10:30, depending on what's going on, we'll generally be training. But we always start off with gear checks. So that's a chance for the officer to get some fire reports done, and the crew will go out and just go over all of the trucks. And day shifts, that'll last for an hour or two, and night shifts that generally last for about an hour because it's already been checked by the day crew. And then we can get into some training.
Right. Let me go back to those videos real quick, because I did forget to ask you a question. One of the things I really enjoyed about your videos is again, how you break down the science to a firefighter level. I don't think we need to know everything like scientists need to know, but we do need to know certain parts of it. And I think you do a fantastic job of breaking that down. And one of the ways you do it is, and I brought this up before we started recording, is when you're showing the convected air in a building. And I've never seen this before. You show by putting red dye into a fish tank. Tell me a little bit about how you came up with that, and kind of explain a little bit of what that is for everybody listening.
So I'd really love to take credit for that one, but it was actually mentioned to me that another firefighter I know saw it just as a demonstration of convection in one of their kids' videos. So he sort of said, I saw this cool thing for convection in my kids' video that they're learning at school. And I went, that's great. I can actually use that. And then went play around and replicated it and tried to make it a bit more relevant to us. But essentially, when we're talking about air, we're talking about a fluid, like the way it behaves. And so we can actually replicate some sort of stuff within a structure fire by using water, because water will operate in a similar way. Because if we heat it, its density changes, the same as air and smoke. If we heat it, its density changes. Hot water will rise, cold water will lower, and when it reaches a barrier, it will spread out. As it cools down, it will start to mix with the cooler air, and that's where we start to see the mixing, as we would with smoke. So it actually works as a really good analogy for what's happening inside a fire. And for my videos where I'm trying to make a lot of this stuff at home, just in my garage, and I don't have a lot of resources, a video like that's simple and easy to do and repeatable. So, it actually worked out to be a pretty good little representation of a neutral plane and how
absolutely.
moves through a building.
And another one you've done, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, is you do a great demonstration of conduction. I've never seen one done like this. I've seen where they try to heat up one side of a rebar, but you don't really see what's happening to the metal other than the orange glow. You don't actually see the heat moving through it. You do something totally different to where you see the heat move through this piece of metal. Explain that.
So that was I was just trying to demonstrate what actually happens with our 3 types of heat transfer. And that one, I think I've just got these steel boxes that I'm just trying to demonstrate. And it just so happened that because it was galvanized, that when I was heating one side of it, you can easily see the rings moving out through it, and it just sort of easily shows the conduction as it moves. So it was actually just a bit of a happy accident that it worked as clearly as it did. But I did heat up about 10 other things in my garage before I finally got to something that actually looked cool. So there was a lot of burnt stuff in my garage that day. So that was pretty much where I went. And then just rubbing a bit of plywood on the outside of it just sort of demonstrates that it gets to a certain temperature that allows things to reach their auto ignition temperature as soon as they're touching it, which for anything like if you've got a marine boat, marine appliance, then you'll be talking a lot about boundary cooling and all kinds of stuff when you're talking about marine firefighting. And that's particularly relevant when you start talking about steel and conduction and those kinds of things. So
it was impressive. I like that. I'm going to do something similar for my new guys. I'll show them your video, but I might take it out and do it as well. When I saw that, I said, man, that's really good. You can literally see the heat moving through the metal.
Honestly, I highly recommend, as much as like videos are a good thing, there's nothing quite like taking people outside and just burning something in front of them. Like videos are good. And if you have nothing else, and during like all the COVID lockdowns, I think videos have been a good way of doing things. I don't know what it's been like over there, but in Australia, we've had lots of lockdowns. And so people have been able to at least refresh a little bit doing some video stuff, but nothing beats actually taking people outside and just showing them how it works by actually heating something up or burning something in front of them. Because I think that's just the best way of really.
Yeah. Anytime you can, I've always said this, if you can put tools in a firefighter's hands, they're going to have more fun at training than just sitting down. But unfortunately you got to do that sometimes. And luckily there's videos like yours out there to do that. Your one on Flashover, that's another one I really liked because it gives a better insight to what a flashover is. You know, what we're taught so often is just that it's instantaneous. Everything reaches its ignition temperature all at once. But I like how you go into it and say, well, you know, these larger fuel packages will probably catch first, and then shortly they're going to put off all that, you know, heat release rate, and then catch everything on very quickly. Where the way you describe it, it's more of a process than just an instant, you know, that's it, that's fire.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting one with Flashover is there is a bit of a trend for people saying that it's like kind of almost more of a boom than a transitional period. And it absolutely can happen really, really quickly. But it also can happen over a longer time period of, you know, 5, 10, 15, even 20 seconds, depending on the fuel that's in the room, the height of that fuel, the available oxygen, the size of the fire, and various other little bits and pieces. So flashover is a really variable thing. But at the end of the day, as long as you're reading for the signals, then you're going to be able to do something about it, whether it be actually stop it or retreat out of there, depending on how big it is and what you've got with you.
I do know there's 2 videos on there that seem to not really go with firefighting. Do you know the ones I'm talking about?
Right. Is that the first two?
There's one, the final cave, and one about drones, caves, and islands. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't seen them yet, but I'm just judging by the little pictures of them that there's not a whole lot of fire there. Now,
I got nothing to do with live fighting.
Pleasing to live fire. Don't get me wrong; it looks beautiful. But when you scroll down, you're seeing all these kick-ass videos. You go down there, like, oh, that's not a fire video.
So it was funny because in making these videos, I didn't want to ever do a bad job of them. When I had the idea that I wanted to make them, and then I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I've got to do a good job of them, because there's no point in me making a video and then having to remake it once I learn how to make videos. And I probably will for a few of them anyway. But so what I did is I went out and just made a few videos as practice for making videos. And I've made a bunch of others, but they're two of them that I just thought that, sorry, my phone just beeped. So they're two of them that I just thought I'd keep up there as, just a bit of a nod to how I learned how to do videos, I suppose. Just a bit of fun, I guess.
Go straight from that to the next one you made, they look great. I mean, that's what I was getting at earlier, was that the quality of them, they're just great. They're not like just thrown together bits and pieces. I mean, they look scripted. They looked well made, well lit. I'm always struggling to get this place lit for my YouTube channel. And I was watching yours, and I was like, it is. It's really, people don't think, but it's difficult to light something like this. I got a light in front of me, and I got a big ass light there. And if I just turn off one light, that's what you get. So I thought they're made very well. And I encourage everybody to go to them, Matt Davis on YouTube, and I'm going to put the link up to your videos when our podcast comes out, and I'll probably put it down tonight. I'm going to put tonight on Facebook that we talked, and I'm going to put these videos out because I think training instructors really need to see these, and they're just great. Again, just nice bite-sized, solid information, straight to the point. Love it, love it, love it, love it.
Really appreciate that. And I'm lucky enough that I actually built out like a really small area in my garage. So the set that I've got for the videos is now like set up in my house permanently. It's just it's a pretty small area downstairs that I also use for like a second office. But it's just there. So if I want to go and record more videos, then I can just walk in there now, and I don't have to set up the lights and all that kind of stuff. It's all just kind of ready to go.
I notice you have a great big long Halligan there. I don't know if I like that too much, but I like the Halligan, but it looks like it's 75 feet long.
It's a pretty big thing. That was given to me as a gift when I got into the job permanently. So it's riveted together at either end. I don't know how well it'd survive actually being used, but for something to have on the wall, it's
I see. But you got a nice bunch of helmets over there. Are those all your old helmets?
Yeah, so I've been a bit lucky that I've been able to keep them. Generally, they want them handed in once we're done with them. But all of mine have always been going out of service when I've been getting rid of them. So it hasn't been like an upgrade or anything else. It's, hey, this one's buckle's broken, or the visor's melted, or this one's just seen too much exposure, and they all would have been thrown away. So I've just kind of kept them, and
that's nice. It's nice, simple set. I like it. Mine's a little cluttered, but that's by design. I got a lot.
I like it. I've been looking in the background.
See, my helmets are over right there. That's like all my junk.
Oh yeah.
See, yeah.
I don't want to move.
Yeah,
that's cool. I'd go down to my set and have it in the background, but the internet basically doesn't work down there. So
it's not working too well for me today, I'll tell you that right now. But again, I try to steal my wife's internet, so she's probably having all kinds of trouble doing stuff upstairs at work. I'm like, sorry. But so let me ask you this before we go. I do want to ask you a couple of things. So we've talked a little bit about your box alarms over there, or how you all respond, and I want a little bit about building construction. What's the building construction like in your area? For example, over here in my area, we have a lot of balloon frame. No fire stops in the wall. So, it goes from the basement to the attic or down really quick. And we have a lot of lightweight frame construction. Oh, it's not true dimensional lumber, and they use a lot of glue and gusset plates to hold this stuff together. So under fire, it does not hold very well. How does that compare to what you have to deal with in your area?
So for one, we don't have a lot of basements in Australia. It's certainly not a common thing. They are there, but for the most part, houses won't have basements here. So basement fires are pretty rare. And we don't have the balloon type construction that you have over there. There is generally, through either way they construct walls and so forth, stops between each floors. So we don't have the fire extending through to the roof space as quickly. So if we get one at a lower level, it's actually got to break through each floor to get all the way there. So I think that construction wise is a little bit different. Since sort of the 1950s and 60s and 70s, we've changed construction types, where back then we used to use a lot of hardwood, which was more resilient to fire and had a higher threshold of pain. And these days we're using lots of pine, lots of gang nails, which are these metal plates that go on the outside of the joints in the timber and everything. And we're using a lot of those laminated timbers that you're talking about. So we've gone from sort of older homes which weren't very thermally efficient at all, lots of holes and gaps, but they had a really high threshold of pain, which meant that there was a lot longer to structural collapse. But now our modern homes, they're getting, bigger open areas, so there's more air in them. They're made of much lighter construction, and we're talking about, pine that's all glued together, and there's, gang nails on the outside rather than actually big bits of steel running through the entire length. So we're moving from sort of not thermally efficient with lower fuel loads and high threshold of pain through to really thermally efficient, really low threshold of pain with really high fuel loads. So in Australia right now, we're seeing this transition towards sort of much more flammable homes in a way, which it does mean that fighting fires for us is going to be more of a challenge going forward, because there's going to be faster to structural collapse, faster to flashover, with higher fuel loads and probably more toxic smoke as a result of all these changes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So before we go, I do want to say this. I got a video for you to make, and I'm dying to see it because it's a convoluted subject, or can be, but I can't wait till you put the Matt Davis touch to it. And that is a video on smoke explosions and backdrafts. How can you get that made for me?
Oh, yeah. I would love to make that video, and it's been on the list for a while. The only thing I haven't been able to do is come up with a way of doing it justice with the resources I've currently got, because I'm just trying to think of how to actually film some good backdrafts, but I'm trying not to use fire service resources for these videos because, one, we don't have a backdraft prop in our state, so I'd actually have to come up with one. But it's just kind of getting to that point of getting some good backdraft footage so that then I can unpack it and actually talk about it. So it's on the list. I've just got to try and figure out how to do it.
Could you possibly set up a backdraft in your garage? You do a lot of work there.
Yeah, I think I'm already probably getting away with about as much as I can with my wife, what I set fire to and blow up in my garage. So yeah, I don't know if I'll get away with a backdraft.
It'd be a great video. I'd recognize the garage too. I'm like, that son of a bitch did it.
Oh. Probably go viral. Random Australian bloke backdraft.
Yeah, that might be on the news. I might be able to see that over here. Brother, I appreciate your time being on my show. I know we've had some issues with the connection. I'm not surprised really, but I think it's going to end up just fine. But before we go, again, thanks for being on 3-Point Firefighter. Before we go, I just wanted to point something out to you. This is a knife.
No, that's not a knife.
Oh.
That's a knife.
All right, thanks for being on the show. I'll see you later. Today's podcast was sponsored by Fire Facilities, designers and manufacturers of realistic, built-to-last training structures and mobile units for 30 years. Make training count. Visit firefacilities.com for more information.